Welcome to the Piece of Me podcast, the place to find different ways to bring enjoyment, simplicity, happiness, and of course, more peace into your life. Life gets busy, noisy, and at times it's messy. I'm here to help you clean things up and put peace back in its place. Each episode, I'll share tips, ideas, and fresh perspectives to help you live your best life. Hi friends, it's Lexi Lee. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. I'm so glad you'll be joining me for today's episode, which is all about minimizing distractions and making your daydream a reality. Now, this is episode 20, a very special episode, and it's also a true story. Now, it's special because it's my story. I want to get real with you and hopefully inspire you on your journey as I take you along on mine. Chances are, if you're listening to this story, you too have a vision, a dream. Hopefully, you have people around you that are supporting you, but you're probably also getting advice from people who don't actually know a thing about what it is you're trying to do. So they may tell you what they think you should do or how they think you should do it. Now, I once had a dream to own my very own business, and this is before the real boss babe movement. I wanted to start a specific kind of business because I was really passionate about it. I cared about all the details, like the little things that I think other people might overlook. And I knew that I could deliver a different twist than what had been done before. Plus, I didn't want to just be a business owner. I mean, sure, being a business owner before the age of 30 was pretty cool, and as a female, it was a boss move. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds on what exactly my business was because honestly, it doesn't matter. And you'll see why in a minute. But I do want to start with this. It was in an industry that I was very passionate about from a young age. Like the calling was just always there. It never faded. Now, for years, I did collect things that I figured my future shop would have. Also, friends would send me articles if they came across something about other people in the industry that had already done what it is I wanted to do. I also talked about it for years. I would say, one day, I want to have my own shop. So the dream was always there, but it was just stored away for future use. I started to get more serious about this dream when a community college about an hour away from where I was living had offered a 6-week night class package to learn more about starting a business for less than $200, which in my opinion was a small price to pay for the knowledge I really needed. It was a long drive, and it was on top of my already full-time demanding career. But again, I had a lot to learn. And from this class, I was starting to build my network with other future business owners, and we were all learning the basics together. It was actually a lot of fun. Now, I mentioned my full-time job. I had a long commute to my job each and every day. And on that commute, I would pass an old shop that sold exactly what it is I wanted to sell. Now, this shop was in an old building. Some of the lights worked, some of them didn't. Barely any customers would ever visit, and it kind of looked a little sketchy, if I'm being honest. So I started to ask around about it. Who owns this place, and what's the deal with this? I heard crazy things, like the owner ran his shop by himself, and sometimes he would show up and sometimes he didn't, and the place would just be closed for the day. No consistent hours. Sometimes the owner would be there, and sometimes he would be asleep in the corner. I kid you not. He even had a bell inside the shop for customers to ring if he was asleep. Now, for about a year, I drove by this store, and I looked at it every time I drove by. I daydreamed. I dreamed about what colors I would paint it, what my sign might look like, what the name of my shop would be, but I also didn't know how to actually do it. I just had this vision. And I didn't really know what I was doing, right? I just knew that I could learn and eventually I'd figure it out. But what I did know is I still really wanted to do it. Now, at the time, I was in a serious relationship and my fiance and I were shopping for a house. I share this because I had asked my realtor about the shop. I asked him what he knew. Would the shop ever hit the market? How much might the owner be asking for it? Just so I had a ballpark of what to expect. And I really wasn't in any position to buy a large commercial building for a shop. I was still under the age of 30, in a full-time career, and I'm also busy planning a wedding. So life was busy. Now, the next part of this story is very important. Remember how I told you people will tell you what they believe is true? Well, this is why. So my realtor told me that the owner will never sell the building because he's going to pass it down to his children and it's going to stay within the family business. So when I heard this, it crushed me. All the daydreams I had were crushed in an instant. Meanwhile, another commercial chain shop in the same industry had hit the market. And they were actually asking a reasonable price because the business was failing. But keep in mind, I still had zero experience. I just had a dream. I had a passion, not a stack of cash to invest. So I did sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I was able to view their P&L statements to make a decision. Now, P&L statements are profit and loss statements, and they tell you how healthy a business is, meaning, is it making any money? Now, I really believed I could make it work, but part of the agreement was a 5-year lease in a high-traffic part of the city, meaning they were asking a lot of money per square foot, meaning the rent was really high. That scared me. So I kept my eyes on the old shop every day as I drove by it. And winter eventually came, and if I'm being honest, my relationship was a bit rocky. I was doing great with my job. I was exhausted at the end of my 12-hour day. I had long commutes. The job was demanding. It was taking its toll. And then you add in the uncertainty of my relationship, and my daydream was fizzling out before it had even started. And I was just feeling deflated. I wasn't feeling inspired. Maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe it was just time to take my vision and chalk it up to just that it was just an idea that I once had. Then something crazy happened. Something I never thought would happen. I drove by that shop one day on my way to work, as I usually did. The lights were off. It was dark inside. The building was covered in snow. But guess what? There was a giant for sale sign standing in front of it by the road. I nearly slammed on my brakes. Like, what the heck? I couldn't even believe it. Like, what? How? How did this happen? Like, what about the family business and the kids? Like, did the kids not want it after all? And how did all the kids say no? I had a lot of questions. I first called my realtor, who was a residential realtor, not commercial, and he was just as surprised as I was. I expected him to be the expert, so how was he so wrong? But he got me in touch with the commercial broker who was handling the property, and we scheduled a showing immediately. I was so excited, and it was all I could think about. Now, the day of the showing, it's about 10 degrees outside. It's still winter. There's still snow everywhere. We all walk into the building, and it was really old. It's falling apart. It smelled musty. We walked through with flashlights. It was full of old equipment, dirty, ceiling panels were missing, the lights didn't work, the heat wasn't on. There was even an old smoke detector that kept beeping every once in a while as the battery was like slowly dying in it. And there was also a leak in the roof that dripped water onto the floor. And it really looked like it had been in that shape for a while. My first thought was, wow, this wasn't exactly the daydream vision that I had in mind, but it was still exciting. The shop needed a lot more TLC and paint than I expected, along with new pipes, a patch on the roof, light fixtures, and the list went on and on. Now, as exciting as all this was, I still don't know a thing about starting a business or even keeping it going, and those can be two very different things. It was so overwhelming, but it was at that showing that I learned a few life lessons. First, the owner who was selling the building was in his 80s and he was in poor health. Oh, and those kids that he was going to leave the business to, he didn't actually have any. Yeah, think about that. He didn't actually have any, but I was told that he did. He also had never been married, and he didn't have any siblings that were still alive, so it was really up for sale. Like, wow, just wow. And here I was listening to all these people tell me what they thought they knew, and this whole time they were wrong. Now, I'm going to spare you all the details, but it took about 4 months of back and forth contract negotiations to agree on terms. And during those months, I kept working my full-time job. I kept doing that. I still daydreamed every day about the shop. And some days I had a ton of hope and excitement. And then other days, the contract would come back to me with red marks all over it and a new clause. And then once again, I felt the dream fizzle. I couldn't afford or accept some of these terms, especially as someone who's never started a business before. Now, at the end of those 4 long and drawn-out months, we did eventually come to terms. I was honestly shocked that my pushing back on some of the seller's requests were even met. I felt like I'd won. I felt like finally this is going to happen. But I was still a ways away from the doors ever opening. I mean, first I needed the keys. Now, I did sign the papers, and it was one of the most exciting and scariest moments of my life. I'm going to make my dream a reality. I'm going to start my own business. Oh my gosh, I still have a full-time job. And also my boyfriend and I, are we going to make it? So on top of all of those feelings, I kept this huge announcement to myself. I was worried I'd lose my full-time job if my boss found out that I owned my own business on the side. So imagine being so excited after all this time and then having to keep it to yourself when all you want to do is shout it from a rooftop. Well, I eventually did get to meet the owner himself, and his name was Joseph. And this 80-something-year-old frail man had white hair, glasses, and he wasn't this mean man that I thought I was dealing with in all these contract negotiations. He was actually very soft-spoken and kind. One of the reasons he even entertained and accepted my contract was this. I shared the same vision that he once did. I was turning his shop into something else, but I wanted to keep the same type of business, just rename it, freshen it up, bring it a new life. He once had this very same dream, but it was about 50 years before. So I then spend the next several months going into the shop at night after my full-time job to clean, knock down walls, do some more demoing, throw things out. There was still no heat or even running water for a while. We actually worked with a space heater and battery-operated lamps. And many months later, the shop was ready. I could finally share my secret with everyone. Oh, and I did approach my boss, and I told her what I was up to. And her response? As long as it didn't impact my day job, I was free to do whatever. So thank you, boss lady. I still appreciate that. So springtime rolls around and the weather starts to get warmer. The snow is melting, days are getting longer. I'm getting closer to opening. I had so much adrenaline running through my veins. But another curveball was about to be thrown my way. About a week before I opened, an older lady had accidentally drove into the shop. Yes, you heard that right. She drove into the shop. Luckily, she was fine. She had just mixed up the gas and the brake pedal when she was doing a 3-point turn in the parking lot. But she did hit the building, and now I had more issues to work with. So after some more time, we repair the shop, and then I opened a little bit later than I wanted to. The community was so warm. They were welcome to it. They were great. So many customers commented on the freshened up look, the bright lighting, the improved quality. They were just so happy to see a piece of the town open again. The experience was really great, and I was just learning so much. I'd also found and hired some really fantastic people, and I felt really fortunate to have them working for me. But not every day was easy. There were a lot of tears shed on many occasions. There were struggles with the equipment, running out of product, getting visits from town officials unexpectedly when I couldn't be there, issues with certain employees. Oh yeah, that all happened and then some. But, we got through it. And on one special evening, right around dusk, I was at the shop and Joseph stopped by. Now, this was his first time seeing the shop since I had done some external renovations and I had opened. I noticed his big white Lincoln pulling into the parking lot, so I went outside to greet him. And it was such just a surreal moment. I was so thrilled to see him. In my opinion, in my mind, this man was kind enough to let me live my dream. He had given me this opportunity. Now, he told me how great the building looked and all the lights around it, the paint, the new sign. And we stood there together in the parking lot in silence for a while, just looking around. And that's when I realized he was crying. He had tears coming down his face. So, of course, I start to cry too. He was just so grateful that I was the next generation to keep his vision going and that I had taken such good care of the shop. I had brought it back to life. I will always cherish that moment. Now, unfortunately, that was the last time I saw Joseph. Joseph passed away a couple of years later, and I wish I had a chance to thank him again and just say goodbye. But I think his heart was happy and full when he died. At least I hope it was. Now, to wrap up this story, life eventually did take me down a different path. And after some years, I did eventually close the shop. And I sold the building, though, to my then fiancé so he could have the chance to get his dream off the ground. He rented the space even further. He bought all new equipment, opened his doors for many more years following that. He and I did eventually decide to go in different directions too. Now, I share this story because I hope it inspires you. I hope you hear your own advice and the words of wisdom. Others don't actually know as much as they think they do. And imagine if we always listen to them and not ourselves. I always smile when I think about the shop or the years spent there. The great people I worked with, the amazing customers I met, and I now laugh when I think about the moments that once made me cry. The long days were worth it. The headaches were worth it. The tears were worth it. And I'm really proud of myself for taking the chance and taking that risk, for doing something I'd never done before, because it wasn't easy. But it was also one of the best experiences I've ever had. Now, I want to leave you with this. If you've ever seen horses race, you'll see those black kind of eye patches or blinders that they wear in a race. There's a reason why horses have blinders on when they are in a race. It's to win. It's to keep the focus on the finish line and to minimize the distractions that are going on around them. It's to keep them focused on the goal. So whatever dream or vision you have, it's okay to listen to others, but keep your blinders on. Keep your focus on the finish line and don't believe everything everyone tells you along the way. Now, your journey ahead will likely be hard and things will happen that you won't anticipate, but it will also probably be one of the best experiences you have ever had. Thank you so much for joining me. I really look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Thanks again for joining me today. If this episode has helped you or can help someone you know, please share it with them. Stay safe and we'll chat again soon.